what I think personally is that to really get into a lot of these places, they kind of first need, well, not first need, but a lot of the guys who are there, they need like a big push, and that big push first comes from the want of, being more fulfilled on like a ground level sort of thing. That, like, what was that, the third level in Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like filling that out, the like love, the interpersonal, like meaningful interpersonal relationships, that type thing. I feel like that's like, for me, what I think personally, that's like the main driver. Is that Joel I see? It is Big Joel, but on the Small Joel channel. Anyways,
Hey everybody, it's late, so I'm going to try to keep it down. So recently, I made
anybody
a
up keeping
video
it down?
about a tweet that I'm going to put on the screen right now. I disagree with the
Sid.
tweet for a few reasons.
I saw that. The reason young men flock to alt-right MRA movements is because the left gives brain-dead advice to young men. We need to be more compassionate to them for our own sake.
We really think like 12-year-old boys on Twitch are waking up like, yeah, dude, I love to suppress others. My male privilege in this patriarchy is good, and I want more. I don't.
Why is Vosh bullying this eloquent homeless man?
So I think this is actually like the
he grew up in LA, so
fundamental disagreement between Vosh and I. It's the real reason why this disagreement is happening in the first place. So, let me respond. What I believe is not that teenage boys are walking around thinking to themselves, oh, how I love to be a sexist today. That's not what I mean at all. What I am saying is that misogyny within our current social, historical, and material context does confer benefits to boys, that it helps them in certain ways. For one thing, it tells boys that they're better than women, that they are the better of the two sexes, which is, of course, a psychologically gratifying thing to believe. It tells boys that women, as a political bloc, need to be available to men, that men deserve women and should be getting them. It tells men that women should be subservient to their needs. That is to say, they are not the protagonists of society. Men are the main characters of the world, and women exist to play a supporting role in that. These are all tangible, material benefits to people's lives. And while I don't think that 13-year-old boys watching Andrew Tate are thinking to themselves, oh, isn't it great that I'm going to be suppressing some women soon, I do think they see Andrew Tate and think, well, he's kind of got a lot to offer. That is an interesting proposition to me. It would be cool if women were how I wanted them to be. To make my point more clear here, let me talk for a minute about like racism. Another example.
No. Okay, so I'm gonna take the enlightened centrist route. Okay, I'm gonna take the enlightened centrist route, which is always the correct route if you remember. I think they're both like, they both have like decent points. So when it comes to this, what I think personally is that to really get into a lot of these places, they kind of first need, well, not first need, but a lot of the guys who are there, they need like a big push, and that big push first comes from the want of, being more fulfilled on like a ground level sort of thing. That, like, what was that, the third level in Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like filling that out, the like love, the interpersonal, like meaningful interpersonal relationships, that type thing. I feel like that's like, for me, what I think personally, that's like the main driver, right? I think a lot of guys I don't believe that you would get a lot of guys into this if it was just, hey, want to feed into a social political system that makes women feel bad, right? Like, no, I don't think that's true or anything. I just don't believe that would be like the main drive. The main drive is like them ground floor level there, and then I think it's helped out. I feel like the patriarchy there has a supporting role where it sweetens the deal, where it makes it easier to take these things in, because you'll be playing into that system, and then they tell you about the system, they sell you it's good, they tell you it's natural, they tell you it's biological even, right? And so all of these things kind of like, I think they all work together. I don't believe they would have as many people into this if like the patriarchy wasn't real. And I don't believe they'd have as many people into this if these guys weren't literally like starving of any intimate relationship status at all, right? I just don't believe either of these things we'd be seeing the situation without either of these two things here. And yeah, like I don't believe they're like, hey, want to impress a woman today? And they're like, oh, so base truths, hell yeah, count me in. They're not like that. But I think afterwards, where it's like, I want to reinforce this system because it's good for me. It sweetens the deal a lot for you to be like, oh hell yeah, I'll do that. I mean, it's great for me. Why wouldn't I? Right? But I don't feel like that's not how they get in there, and I don't necessarily even think it really keeps them there. but I could be it could be playing a bigger role than I can imagine, because also there are some people, you know, the whole like save Western society type thing, like which way Western man type thing, that is there, like as well as like we're fixing society type thing, that's in there. But I feel like you have to be bought into some other things before you get there. That's just me though. Andrew Tate is the Professor Oak of misogyny.
I don't believe that men and boys are merely manipulated through their insecurity into believing this arbitrary and horrible thing about women. Rather, I think that the appeal of Andrew Tate has been the appeal that patriarchy has had for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That the reason why people are attracted to figures like him is that social misogyny is a fairly popular political project, and that's for real reasons. This is important to understanding the topic at hand, because if insecurity was all that was there, if it truly was the animating force of misogyny in our society, then maybe Vosh would be right. We just have to try to make men feel good about themselves on the left, and it'll all sort of work itself out. But I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a correct assertion to make. There's a few points in his stream where Vosh...
Remember when we talked to like insane, very stupid lefties? When they talk about why it's okay or even good for them to ignore social issues, opposed to talking about like economic and material conditions, right? And their reasoning is just like, oh, like racism and misogyny and ageism and all of these things are simply outcroppings of capitalism, and so all we need to do is just like, you know, take down capitalism and everything will be fine. No, that's not true. It's just not. It's just factually, literally just not true. Okay. And so it could help. It could help. It could. I'm not even saying it will help. It could help, but that won't fix the situation. There's so many things that people have done throughout history that is not only like contradictory, but like actively harming the amount of money that they make, but they continue doing it anyways because racism just tastes so good, or like sexism or like xenophobia literally just tastes too good for them to like put it down. And I don't think that if you like simply just go the route of let's just make everybody not racist or something, that we'll get there without tackling the economic issues that help people be racist in the first place, right? I don't, with those two things, they need to like go hand in hand and together to tackle this problem holistically. And so you'll have to tackle the problem holistically and not just like take one of the other, you know what I mean? Classism is the only real ism. Yeah, there you go.
Seems to treat me as some kind of fatalist. Like I believe that men and boys are just going to be a certain way and that there's no way to change that.
It's like, well, we couldn't have done anything. Yes, you could have. We always can. We always can. Never tell yourself like, oh, this was predetermined. No, we can always try harder.
No, I don't believe that at all. I have hope for everybody in this, you know, up world of ours. But at the same time, we have to be cognizant of material reality, of the things that are actually bearing on people's lives. The tweet in question, the one I responded to, made it seem like some bad leftist advice was a primary animating feature of men being misogynistic, of liking people like Andrew Tate. And I'm just saying, no, material reality is much, much more important here. Some advice that lefty Twitter people give is a drop in the bucket, in my opinion. Okay, a little change of location here.
Also, I don't think it's just lefty Twitter people. We don't have to like put it into our niche little bubble. I would think it's like, you know, everybody, if you're just vaguely left wing, right? Disseminate it to like your average person walking the street and not just the niche internet micro celebrities on a certain part of Twitter.
Here, the next thing I wanted to talk about is Vosh's section on advice.
Yeah, but like, do we need
in
to
my
watch
video, I say very brazenly that almost all advice on the internet from people who don't know you is completely useless. And Vosh, of course, you know, disagrees with that and thinks online advice is very helpful. So I'm actually a little bit more conciliatory about this point. I'll admit something to you here.
I'm glad
I have a bug on my ass about self-help. As an industry, as a concept. I think the entire ecosystem of self-help people is overrun with charlatans who have convinced themselves with literally no expertise that they're some kind of an expert and can tell you what to do. I don't think it really helps people. I don't think there's evidence that it does any good. And I just don't like it. It pisses me off. It's my personal, like, bugaboo. That said, I was too brazen in my video. It's not my place to tell you what content is helpful to you, what might help you as a man in this world. I don't know that. But nevertheless, there were a few points I wanted to make about Vosh's section here. So first of all,
I personally think, okay, my boys, do I have any boys in here? Do I have any like especially like my age boys, okay, in the realm of like 18 to like 25 or something? I get any boys in that age range there? Have you ever like been, especially if I have boys who want to date girls. You don't have to be straight, but like a woman enjoying boy. Okay. Do you have you ever in your life looked up some like self-help or like some advice for when it comes to dating because you actually wanted to know? Have you ever done that in your life? Yes, I did. Yes, unfortunately. How to tell if a girl likes you. I don't mean necessarily that. Or I'm just maybe more like how to kiss, or you know, how to like text back or something, or like date ideas, things along those lines, right? Why pee hard? You gotta know sometime. How to be hot for men. I know, right? Yeah, personally. Now I know like a lot of you may look back on some of that advice and it was pretty awful bad. Personally, in my life, I did look up some of those videos when I was like younger, right? I think I looked up a how to kiss video when I got my first girlfriend, and just like some other like random videos about like dating and stuff like that, like in the realm of self-help, right? I didn't go to WikiHow now. I was watching Fresh and Fit, obviously. No, they weren't even around when I was younger, and like not all of it was very good, and a lot of it was actually quite bad. But I will say that that some of it was actually not that bad, and some of it was actually pretty helpful. Is genuinely pretty helpful, I think, personally. I don't think it has to all be bad. I don't know. Like I feel like a lot of lefties have what I've realized recently is that a lot of lefties have like a really big hate boner for like self-help style content, or just self-help any content, or like advice style content online at all, or just advice in general. Just like online advice in general. Like they really hate it. Well, all of this was happening, I saw something genuinely remarkable. Somebody unironically said that self-help is reactionary. Not like this self-help is reactionary, or not a lot of self-help is reactionary. They said self-help, period, is reactionary. And I'm like, really? Really? It was definitely a huge bro moment. Massive bro moment. Most online self-help content sucks. Yes, I'm not even saying that. I'm not even going against that. I think that's actually incredibly true, and it should be a lot better. All right. I mean, back in 2014, you know, most political content sucked. And still today, most political content sucks. But I think there's a lot better political content, like independent, like I think there's a lot better independent political content on these days than there was like in 2014. I think personally. That's just me though. I thought as leftists, we want to help people. Dude, there was so many people who are like, self-help is reactionary, self-help is bad. Don't do self-help. And I had no clue that people hated self-help so much, right? Or like advice style content so much. I had no clue that everybody had like, or at least everybody in the left had this massive hate boner for advice style, for life advice style content. I had no clue. And while it is true that not a lot of it isn't bad, but that sound like a good time to say we should have better advice and not we should have no advice. You know, I never thought that the fight when it comes to the minds and hearts of people who are prone to becoming reactionary is fight to give them no advice at all. You know? Yeah, I know there's a huge overlap. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm disagreeing with saying blanket it's just bad and reactionary and fascist or something, right? Which I have seen, and I've seen a lot of, and I think needs to stop. I think it needs to stop. I don't think there's any problem with like advice style content, especially if it's like just decent general advice that you can give to somebody, or even non-general and specific advice and specific instances for which like people kind of find themselves in. And if you've been in there and you have like, you know, any amount of like ability to show some insight on this issue, it seems like pretty cool. I mean, people are pretty scared of social interactions. I know I am. Good advice that's all I'm saying is that good advice is good and bad advice is bad. That's just what I'm trying to say, partner. And I think like if you consider yourself like a self-help guru, you're probably like 99% of the time they're like and stealing your money, right? Or if they kind of have something to sell you that they won't give to you at least partly for free, or at least, you know, a little bit even more unorganized for free, then they're probably like stealing something from you. But who can really say what advice is good and what advice is bad, man? So true. Use your brain. You got to do a little thinky and you got to use your brain. I mean, like, I don't know. Every once in a while, you got to just be like, yes, I'm sorry. Sometimes you just really have to use your brain. I'm very sorry. I hate leaving like political advice like this, but sometimes you genuinely, unironically, like just have to use your brain. I'm I'm kidding. I know you're kidding, but it reminded me of like it reminded me of, because there are some people who would kind of unironically actually say that. It really reminded me of when we were talking about like neo pronouns, like neo pronouns, and somebody was like, "How do you know if somebody's being like lying to you and having a little haha funny with their pronouns?" Because for one, that would definitely happen. And the advice that we gave was just like use your brain, and then people didn't like that. But it is true. Sometimes you do literally just have to use your brain, and some people are actually a little averse to that. But like that's a bigger problem. If they can't do anything without like advice up front, then that's like not I don't think that's a problem with self-help. I think that's a problem with them, and they need to seek therapy and grow up. Know what I mean? Not to be racist or anything, but they probably should like do that. It's probably for the best. You can tell, let's be honest. Yeah, I'm just like, think about it, buddy. And then do a little bit of cross-referencing. Anyways, I didn't mean to pause on this face of him. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Big Joel.
I was talking about self-help advice in my video. I was speaking about like pretty broad advice on how to get motivated, on how to be a successful person, stuff that I generally think is absolute nonsense. However, it seems like what Vosh is talking about is more specific. His major example of the usefulness of
I mean, if the advice is like how to be a successful business owner, like something like that, then I think these days from some of the stuff that I've seen, it's just like it's kind of clickbait. And then the actual advice is like, make sure you have a product that you believe in, which, I mean, you know, that's normal advice that won't guarantee you being a successful business person. But I mean, like, it's points you in like a decent direction, I would say personally.
Advice is like giving people words on how to hold a conversation with a girl at a party, you know, where to take girls for dates, etc.
Give an example of good advice right now. Well, I did earlier with like the guys.
Damn, his chair is
like cheap local.
What the is it? Is this what it's like to have cats? Is this what it's like to have cats? You just have to be perfectly okay with them digging their claws into everything that's fabric that you have, slowly destroying it over time. It really is sometimes. You see this? Just look at it's war torn. It's battle hard. It's battle scarred. My wife made me get a cat. Yes. Yeah, dude. They just like dig their nails into everything. It's wild. I'm not saying dogs don't tear stuff up. I'm just saying when dogs tear stuff up, it's very understandable, visible, and it probably goes in the trash. Okay? Like if your dog has torn something up, it's not like, oh man, it's more like, oh, this is not usable anymore. It goes in the garbage. And so it's no longer in your home anymore. But like when a cat destroys something, it's on the level. Sometimes I think it's even more egregious. So where it's still okay enough to the point where you can still use it, but it's up enough to the point where you'll never forget what they did. you know what I mean?
Local things to go to, like the stuff that I've said about when you're having a conversation with somebody at a party.
Cat owners be like, "Oop, wait," cat owners be talking to you, and then they're like, "Oop, wait, my cat just threw up. I had to go clean it."
Any kind of social situation, make sure to occasionally ask questions of them or to prompt responses so they can tell you implicitly how they feel about the convo you're having. Oh, and by the way, if you're talking to new people, feel free to talk about your interests. Be interesting. Talk about what you care about.
I think this advice is totally helpful and fine. You know, the more specific, the better. All that said, when I watched this section, I couldn't help but think, will this kind of really specific advice on like how to dress well or how to hold up a conversation with a girl at a party, are these really things that we think are going to fundamentally change our political landscape? I just find myself so deeply skeptical of it. You know, Vosh is giving like WikiHow advice in this section of video. Stuff like ask people questions, take interest in their interests, talk about yourself, things like that. Stuff that you'd find on the frankly incredible website WikiHow. And it's just like, how much of an audience are we really hoping to even help or access with this kind of work? Like, I believe there's a reason why Vosh names his video this really incendiary line about how the left helps Andrew Tate and not something about like how to talk to a girl at a party, because the latter video just wouldn't do very well and probably wouldn't.
Also, that's not what the video was about. I do agree that like obviously naming it something so inflammatory would get more people to click on it, but also like naming the video how to talk to a girl is like actually not what on everyone. I think that would be more clickbait than what he actually called it, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, because he was talking about how he thinks the left helped Andrew Tate, and the main thing wasn't how to talk to a girl, right?
wouldn't hold people's interest nearly as much. I think that Andrew Tate actually has a real advantage in this arena over someone like...
Also, I'm sorry. One last thing that I meant to mention from what he just said was that I think he's viewing this in a bubble. It's not simply that you're giving advice that will just change these people to be like commie socialists or something. You give these people advice and then you bring them into your ecosystem and then you talk about the stuff that you actually want to talk about, and then they'll just be in that environment and be more likely to listen to you and think about it. You know, it's not literally just, you know, tell a guy how to dress and then he'll become a socialist. You know, I feel like that's I feel you gotta there's more to it than just that, partner. Also, yeah, giving good people good advice does make them happier.
Andrew Tate is crazy. Andrew Tate gets to say ridiculous things about women all day, every day. It's incendiary. It's huge. It's controversial. That drives audiences. It makes people interested. I don't necessarily think the same applies to a video about how to ask people questions. Now, 100%, I could be wrong here. I could be dead wrong, and I'm interested to be proven wrong. I think that if this kind of content took off, it might be helpful to people. I mean, people might benefit from it. I don't know. But at the end of the day, my position is honestly just, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think men wanting for little tips on how to have conversations at parties is really what's influencing them to flock to misogynists. That's just what I believe. It's an untested claim you guys are making, and while I can't prove the negative there, that just means we don't know. I don't believe it really has that much of an impact. I don't think it's the major player here in people's...
So, I don't know. I feel like nobody's talked to Joel in a way in which he'll understand it for this topic. I don't know. I mean, just for me personally, if I was to explain this to him, if I had the opportunity to, I would say, even though you may not be able to prove that, I may be able to provide a reason, and a really understandable and convincing reason for why I believe what I believe on the situation, which is that we know that when it comes to like lonely, disaffected dudes, that those guys are more likely to fall into these like alt-right pipelines, and that on top of the fact is them not having connections to other people who even could be like more left-wing makes them more not be able to have some introspection, have somebody push them to do introspection on this, and just have people confirm their biases over and over again with the content that they watch, especially since they don't trust anybody or know anybody who's like left-wing, who's into their space that they can talk to at any point in time. And so once they're already in that space, we do know that they get preyed on by people like Fuentes and Bannon and Trump and like a lot of these other people that got kicked off of these like spheres and Fresh and Fit and Tate and a lot of these people, right? They bring up these like big anxieties that they have, and it's like sweetening the deal to like buy into these things. What I'm saying is that having less of these guys that are the prime like fruit to be picked for right-wing movements is good, and even bringing them closer to left-wing content is even better, because you're killing two birds with one stone, bringing them closer to left-wing content and making them less susceptible for falling down right-wing pipelines, because we know for a fact that when you are lonely, disaffected, have no friends, this, that, and the third, that you are more likely to fall down these pipelines. So just simply like outside of like anything else that we could say, we do know that these guys are far more likely than even your average guy to fall down these pipelines and to buy into this crap. Having less of those people exist, by having them have happier, more fulfilling lives, by being able to talk to them in the way that the right-wingers talk to them, but for good things instead of bad things, is just plain good, and will do a lot to help a lot of these people protect themselves from even falling into that issue in the first place. What if we simply give young men nonsensical advice to confuse them because it is funny? No, because it's gonna trickle down and like hurt women again. as funny and goofy as it would be, it'd probably trickle down and like hurt women again. But yeah, I don't know. That's just what I think about that. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.